To all of us hearing, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to host this podcast. Today, we're diving into a topic that is becoming increasingly relevant, increasingly vital. We are going to be talking about the intersection of the rental business and digital marketing. The rental space is evolving rapidly, and staying ahead means mastering the digital tools that are at our disposal. And to help us navigate this, I have two incredible guests with me today who bring a wealth of knowledge from both sides of the business. Our guests today are Josh Nickell, the CEO of Northside Tool Rental. Josh is a seasoned entrepreneur with decades of hands-on experience in the rental industry. Josh understands very well the operational heart of this business, like few others. And we also have Constantin Cornita, who is a marketing expert with a technical background in IT. Constantin specializes in Google Ads, and he focuses on high precision digital strategies that drive measurable growth. And today, we are going to bridge this gap between traditional rental operations and modern digital strategy. Our primary focus will be talking about the Google Ads in the rental space, how to effectively capture customers the moment they search for equipment. We're going to talk about the industry tips for 2026, strategies to look forward for rental business owners to stay competitive this year, but also practical advice for everyone, for those inside the business, but also the outside industry, simply looking to sharpen their marketing edge. So why don't we start with you, Josh? You scaled a family business, you sold to national, you acted as a vice president of the American Rental Association. Why don't you tell us, when you look at rental companies that stagnate versus the rental companies that actually scale, what's the biggest mindset gap here? Is it the fear of technology? Is it getting stuck in operations? What could it be?
Yeah. First, I got to say thanks for having me and the amazing introduction. Really excited to talk about this topic. It's something that a lot of rental companies could take advantage of and utilize and increase efficiency and effectiveness, which I'm always about. When you look at the average rental company, it's a lot of multi-generational family businesses. And they have great businesses. The owners are really good at wearing a lot of hats. I think back to my dad. He was a good entrepreneur. He was a good salesperson. He was a good operator. People liked working with him and for him. When you think about scalability, though, it's got to be past you. That's part of the scalability problem for a lot of people is you're the problem in a lot of cases. You've got to have systems. You've got to have, what I like to call relentless execution. You've got to have systems in place and operations that other people can follow, and you've got to be able to delegate those things and have people who can replace you, because you as an individual aren't scalable. I think there's a unique gap in the technology space. Rental companies on average don't spend enough on digitization technology, that kind of whole space in general. And a lot of that's that some of what we do in rental is easy. When I go buy let's say $100,000 excavator, I know it's going to make me $50,000 to $70,000 a year. I can pretty much guarantee that if it fits my market, especially if I'm missing rentals, we have a pretty good handle on that's going to make me $50,000 to $70,000 a year. But when I do something that maybe improves efficiency through digitization, or utilize my rental software better, or do things like digital experience, improve that, or digital ads, it's squishy. It's not that really obvious. I'm going to put $100,000 here and I'm going to get $50,000 to $70,000 back. In some cases, it's a lot better return on investment. It's just harder to understand. And as an operator who works in and on the business every day, I'm used to that excavator. I know what's going to happen to that excavator. That's predictable. It's reliable. I'm going to go buy another excavator. But when I think about something like, rental software or digital ads, it's outside of my wheelhouse on average. Luckily, I tend to be a techie guy, so I like this stuff. But that even gets me into trouble. That's why Constantin and I started working together. Is I realized I wasn't as good as I thought I was at it, and I thought what I was doing was good enough. But what I was doing wasn't scalable. I'm not scalable. It's not necessarily the greatest use of my time, and it's something that's incredibly difficult to keep up with. So finding people on your team or great partners to help you scale is critical to that scale, because you're not scalable.
Right. Yes, we've seen many owners view marketing as an expense, and usually they jump straight into cutting it when things get tight. So, as a CEO, how do you view this? Is this essentially an expense, or would you also categorize it as an asset class you'd invest in, like buying a new excavator?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, technically it's an expense, right? And the knee-jerk reaction when the economy is tough or your business is tough or things are competitive is to try and find ways to pull back. And I think that's a smart decision in many cases, because when you start looking through your P&L and L and you start looking at all the little things that you spend money on, you can typically find a lot of waste. I would personally recommend that that's the kind of time that you want to double down on marketing, that you want to double down on advertising, that you want to double down on sales, because that's the time to take market share. And the unique thing about the rental industry is it's a repeat business industry. So it's not about just that first rental. It's about the first rental and all the future rentals that follow that customer. Even a DIY rents 1 to 2 times per year. Customer acquisition cost is real, but it's a recurring revenue stream that you're creating. And that's the time that you want to take market share. And so I think things like digital advertising, when other people are pulling back or scared or uncomfortable, that's the time that you want to be out there and be aggressive. And take those
Right.
customers and start building those relationships. So I would say invest. I think it was Warren Buffett who said, "Whenever I'm going to paraphrase: when everybody's scared, be greedy, and when everybody's greedy, be scared." It's one of those types of things. In marketing, when everybody else is just throwing money at it, that's when you need to get creative. When things are tough and tight and people are pulling back, that might actually be the time where you can get the best return on investment.
Right. Josh, you've spoken before about how the rental industry is built on trust. And in the old days, that would have mean a handshake. Today, in the age of digital marketing, how would a CEO build digital trust before the customer even calls your store?
So this is kind of a pet peeve of mine, and it might be a bias as well. I remember when I got started in the industry, I started, sweeping cobwebs in 1998, but I truly started full time with my dad in 2004. And the website was terrible. It was embarrassing. At least to me, it was embarrassing. And, the pushback that I got from the team and my dad was, well, look at the competition. Their website's worse. And I'm like, you're right, it is worse, but it doesn't build trust. It doesn't look like what they're used to. And I know that we can't afford, Amazon didn't exist then, but we can't afford an Apple experience, or unfortunately I can't even remember, gosh, that was 20 years ago, who were the main websites back then. But it needs to look trustworthy. You don't want to fall on a website, and even if it's better than the competition, not look like you're in the game. You want people to feel comfortable when they hit your digital experience. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be nowadays an Amazon experience, but it does have to look safe. It has to look comfortable. It has to look usable, because that's the first part of trust building. And then it moves to other things like getting on the phone. It's all about taking small steps to build that relationship. One of the things that we're really big on, for example, as soon as we get that first call, our first question, they're going to ask a question something like, how much does it cost to rent a blank? Or do you have a blank? I would say that's probably 75–80% of our questions. Our response is pretty much always, I can help you with that. Tell me about your project. Because it doesn't really matter what they're asking for. It's about solving problems for them. And we found if we handle the phones properly and we handle that conversation properly and build trust properly, which takes a lot of work and training, we've got a great partner for that too. But if we do that right, when the customer's first question is how much is a blank, 75% of the time we can get the order without ever giving them a price. Now, of course, we'll give them the price at the end of the call or something like that, but our prices are fair. And once they trust us, they do that. And so every step of that process is critically important, from, clicking on a quality ad to going to a nice website to having a good ordering experience and a good digital experience to that first phone call that they have with us. And then if we can build that trust, again, it's a recurring relationship. It is easy to maintain recurring relationships. It's hard to get that first customer. So being really intentional and investing a lot in that upfront part of the process where you're building that relationship is critical.
Right. And building on the idea of how trust is fostered today versus how it used to be 20 years ago, if you'd advise a modern owner, if you'd advise a mid-sized rental owner today who wants to double their revenue or to scale, what would be some non-negotiable pillars they need to fix? And would you say digital visibility would be a central one there?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, because It's a question a lot of people might ask, and it's so multivariate in the rental industry. I mean, of course, you're going to have more people and great training and great best practices there. You're going to have more equipment, because if equipment's 100% utilized, you can't make more revenue without more equipment. So you're going to have to invest in both of those things. But then you're also going to have to invest in customer acquisition too, and you have to do that up front. That's the hard and scary part about rental. Again, just like other recurring revenue businesses, which we don't really often talk about ourselves like that, but we truly are. It's like a snowball, so that first order, that first customer, especially when you're opening a new branch, for example, which probably also has to happen if you want to double your business, that first customer, that first order, it's small, it's tiny compared to what you need and where you need to be. But then they come back again, and then you put on a second customer and they come back again, and then a third customer and they come back again. And that snowball slowly starts to pick up speed until you're kind of at a point of maintenance. And there's two ways that I think are the most effective to sell in the rental industry. To me, it's digital ads and direct sales. It's this weird combination of human and digital. I think that AI is going to be really similar. It's going to be this human layer with AI enablement or AI support. In the rental industry, handshakes matter because it is a relationship industry. You said it was a trust industry, and I completely agree with that. But you got to get to where you can get the handshake. You got to get to where you can build the trust by talking to the customer. And it is and Constantin might remember the word. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's an industry where people are wanting to act immediately. When somebody is searching for rent an excavator near me, they need one in the next 48 hours. There's no tire kicking in the rental industry. I mean, I know lots of people who like to go visit the local car dealership and see what's out and see what's cool, or go to Best Buy and look at TVs, or now I guess maybe search more online and look at that stuff. But they're kicking tires. They're maybe clicking on digital ads, but they're looking around. They're curious. They're interested.
Right.
In rental, usually there's a lot of intent. It's a high intent business. When somebody's Googling a piece of equipment, they have a project they're already thinking about, and they probably need to do it relatively soon. And that's something that you want to grab. And then once you grab that and they like and trust you, then they come back to you directly again.
Right. Well, that's a lot of insight into the strategy side of the business, and Josh just gave us a lot of leads for asking the strategic why. Perhaps Constantin, you are the expert on the how. You specialize strictly in this industry, so let's open the hood. Constantin, general marketing agencies, we see that they often fail in this industry. So for some of us, we see that they treat renting an excavator like selling a pair of shoes. What would be the fundamental difference in setting up Google Ads for rental versus retail, which would be something that people miss?
In rental business, especially for small companies, you have to be very specific, and you have to be focused on very local intent. You cannot afford to spend your budget on brand awareness campaigns, on generic terms or broader terms. As George said previously, here in rental, it's the demand is there and it's quite urgent. So that brand awareness, it's a luxury for later. But at the beginning, when you start doing Google Ads, for example, you should be focused on search campaigns that appear in front of the user that search for you. And our approach is focusing on low-hanging fruits, as I call them, because people search for you on Google. You have to be there. They are asking Google about a recommendation, like give me an excavator near me, and you have to be there. You have to be above your competition, in front of that user that is searching for you. And you should start with your highest revenue generator products. You have to be specific, and then you should scale. You should increase your visibility with more generic terms, broader terms, perhaps bidding on competitor terms, and so on. But at the beginning, you should be focused on your top products, on the most expensive products, the ones that you have to rent them out.
Right. Yeah, and if I can add to that really quickly, that's always been the hardest part for me in finding the right vendor for this. I can't tell you how many vendors I have tried to train on the rental industry, because retail is huge. It's obvious. It's something that a lot of people work with, even service-based businesses. And so a lot of the SEO and SEA, search engine advertising people that you talk to, they're really great people, really good at what they do, but they just don't understand rental. And rental is uniquely different, and it's not a huge market. And so I would spend a lot of time trying to train people on how to do AdWords. And that's why so many times I would end up doing it myself, is because I would almost spend more time training them on what the right keywords are and how the intent happens in the rental industry that I should have done it myself, but that's not
And you
scalable.
did.
And
And
I
you did.
did, yeah. And even when you and I first talked, luckily I knew that you had some experience in the rental industry, but I was still in that place of like, maybe what I'm doing is good enough. I already invested a lot of time and effort, and my improvements were already significantly better than the previous company that we had been using. It was not bad. Unfortunately, it was just not bad, and I see that now. Once I started to see Constantin's results. But that's the hard part, and then, to add on to that, it's all the complexity that Google puts on there, and it's constantly changing. I can't keep up with that. I can be pretty decent or maybe not bad at, helping a partner or doing Google AdWords myself and getting a decent starting platform for it. But to really take advantage of it and then adapt when things happen or when Google makes changes or in technology, I'm thinking about like how AI is appearing in search now. Like I can't do that. So I can do not bad myself, but I like to do a little bit better than not bad.
At the beginning, when we started working with you, you told us that you want to focus on more expensive products like excavators, forklifts, lifts, skid steers. But when we checked your account, you had one campaign and everything inside that campaign. You had generic terms like tour rental near me. You had branded terms like Northside tour rental.
Mm-hmm.
You have also specific keywords inside that campaign like skid steer, the good ones. Um, even competitors you had in that campaign, even competitor terms. But when you do that, you cannot focus on specific piece of equipment. That was the issue in your case, because when you mix everything, you have everything in one campaign under one budget, and you tell Google, take these 200 keywords, put them in front of the users that will search for them, and give me the best results you can give me within that budget. Google will focus on the cheaper terms. Google will focus on the keywords that your competitors are not bidding on, for example. Because you have them in that campaign, for Google will be easier to show those ones. So why would Google focus on that skid steer keyword? You have one keyword in that campaign, but you have another 200. So the issue is that you lose focus. And in Google Ads, in search specifically, you have to have everything on it itself. If you have it segmented, then it's easier to adapt. It's easier to switch from you, for example, can tell me that now you have everything rented on elevators. Let's stop that. We can stop it easily. We don't have to go to that campaign, find all those keywords that are related to those products and post them, for example.
Yeah, that's a great technical description of not bad, I think. And what's funny too is I would say our AdWords campaigns were still profitable. On paper, they were still successful. I just didn't realize how much more successful they could be. I remember the first time that we really switched it over and got things cranking, and I got like multiple long-term scissor lift rentals over a weekend. And that's just not something you get digitally, at least not something that I thought you could get digitally very easy. I was happy getting my core drills, my cutoff saws, and my aerators on there. But scissor lift deals, those are exceptional. Those are good, high value, long-term customers. And, even though I was still very happy with spending money on AdWords, I am even happier spending money on scissor lift AdWords.
Yeah. And also when you have them segmented, it's easier to find some trends, for example. Or I remember a few weeks ago, one morning, I checked the dashboard and I saw like we had 20 calls or something for generators. It was a Tuesday morning, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And that was unusual because on generators, we usually have a couple calls per day, not so many. And then I checked the news and I saw that in Atlanta, it was forecasted an ice storm and everybody was freaking out about generators. And by Tuesday, all generators in Atlanta were already rented out.
Yeah.
I remember listening for some of those calls. And at the beginning, your operators were renting those. generators, but at the end of the day, they were already out. So you had no more stocks for generators. Then I talked to you and you say that yes, generators are out of stock, so we should pause that campaign. We paused it for the rest of the week. And we found that just because of the segmentation of the campaigns. If we would have everything in one campaign, we wouldn't spot that because the generator demand went up, but the other products went down because of the ice storm. So the account performance overall had a similar number of phone calls, conversions. So you cannot spot that because it's consistent. But when it's segmented, you can see that yesterday we had a high demand in generator. So it's something unusual. If you stay 2-3 days in a row and you don't see any excavator phone calls, then you can go deeper in that campaign, that specific campaign, and find the issue. So that's the magic of doing the segmentation. And
I think that goes back to what Alex was saying earlier too, about what do you cut? And I think that's the kind of waste that is hard for a non-expert like me to catch or even think of. We were in the middle of a impending, it snowed on one weekend and had ice storm on another weekend. And for Georgia, that's just like a massacre. We were out of all the bread and all the milk, and so the last thing on my mind was, I need to go stop my AdWords campaigns on generators. But that saved money and allowed me to divert that to things that weren't running. I had they weren't really a competitor, I won't say their name, but they also carried generators, and they were actually answering their phone that week. Hello, this is so-and-so. We don't have generators. What can I do for you? That was their first, you talk about trust, that was their first conversation, so it was awesome when you reached out and said, hey, is something going on? Because it doesn't seem like you have generators and your clicks are going wild and maybe we should pause those. That's where you want to save money. That's when you want to divert.
Each of those calls for your competitor costs them money. So
absolutely. And I love that part.
Exactly.
So I guess what we would like to also shine some attention on is Constantin, for someone like Josh, we know that unrented equipment is indeed expensive. So how could we use Google Ads to target those specific categories of equipment that are sitting in the yard? So can we just get granular enough to push just specific equipment if we have too many available, for example?
Exactly. Yes, as I explained before, when we have it segmented, we treat the Google Ads account as the actual physical rental yard. You will not have the drills, chainsaws all piled up in a place and expecting that your customers will find those ones. Or even your operator, when you go and grab a chainsaw, he has to go to that specific shelf with chainsaw, grab it and give it to your customers. We treat Google Ads exactly the same way. We have everything on its own shelf. And if Josh wakes up one morning and sees 10 scissor lifts sitting there, he can tell me, can we push more the scissor lifts? And if there's demand, we will start bidding more aggressively on the scissor lifts on that period until we get them all rented out. The segmentation is the key here. You cannot have everything together. You have to have everything segmented. You can focus on each specific piece of equipment. And even if you have it segmented by campaigns, by ad groups, you can also have different ad copy for each of those keywords. And if you do have a specific ad copy for each keyword, your quality score of the keyword increases and the performance increases. Most agencies have a single ad for all the equipment you have. You can just insert dynamically the keyword in the first headline, so that will be dynamically inserted. And if someone searches for excavator rental near me, the ad will say excavator rental in Atlanta and then best equipment in Atlanta, and that copy will be generic. When you have it segmented, you can say excavators for that kind of jobs. And then if someone searches for scissor lifts, we have scissor lifts in Atlanta for lifting to that height and so on. So you can be specific just if you have all the categories, all the products segmented, and
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't call me out again, because I'm pretty sure that I had the same ad for everything as well. But you're so right. Like, rental's a seasonal business, and weather so impacts it. And it's a supply and demand business. It's a relationship business, but it's supply and demand business. And demand matters. And if we have low availability or high availability, being able to adapt to that at scale is really effective. I mean, I think by this point, everybody probably knows that I'm very comfortable spending on AdWords. I have been comfortable spending on AdWords for well over a decade, and I see it as an outside sales rep for me. So I don't have problems throwing money at it because I know that the return on investment is really effective and really high. But even in that, one of the things that's kind of made me chuckle a couple of times in working with you guys is there have been times we've talked about a budget increase, and then you came back to me and you were like, I couldn't spend it. It just wasn't going to be effective. And I don't think I've ever had, most vendors won't tell you that, but certainly not any AdWord vendor that I've worked with. Like you give them a budget, they're going to go spend that money. And so it's been really helpful for me managing demand and managing seasonality to know that if the right quality isn't there, we're not going to spend it. If we can move it to something that has a higher return on investment, we're going to move it. And I don't have to worry about that anymore. Because that was on me to occasionally be like, I need to relearn Google a little bit. I need to jump in this quarter and try and figure out how to solve something because sales are up or sales are down or, availability is up or availability is down. I need to go solve this problem and figure it out again. That's a distraction. That's a hassle. And, to have, that scalability that we were talking about before where I can just say, here's where I'm at. What do I do? Is super helpful. The same thing happened. We had a competitor pull out of a market. And, so I immediately reached out to Constantin and said, are there opportunities here? Is there anything that we can take advantage of? And, we worked together to figure out some strategies and then track those strategies to see whether they were working for us and how those phone calls were going even to make sure that there was return on investment for it, but to try and take advantage of a competitor leaving our market, which is something I couldn't have done on my own.
Yeah, speaking of the budget, we treat the budget as like a guideline and is the maximum we can spend. So if you approve for us, for example, $3,000 a month, most agencies will do $3,000 a month. That's $100 a day. You set the campaign budget to $100 and expect to spend it. And if you see that you don't spend it, they would focus just on some more generic keywords and try to spend it. But sometimes Google will overspend the daily budget. You set it to 100, it can spend to even 200 per day. And there are cases when agencies wake up in the middle of the month with that budget already spent. So they will just shut down the campaigns and that's it. What we do is having that budget as a guideline. We cannot overspend it, but if we cannot spend that budget, we will never spend it on non-valuable keywords or low-quality keywords just for the sake of spending it. And there is the opposite side of the coin. When we see opportunity and we see that we are driving high revenue and the performance is very good, we can ask you to increase that budget in the middle of the month. But we have the numbers to prove that performance, and we have to show you those numbers for you to accept that increase.
Hey. Well, looking at the crossover between structuring a campaign in the most optimal way and the sales side of the business, the relationship management side of the business, Josh, as a CEO, it's very frustrating to see sales reps chase bad leads. So how would you define a good lead for Northside? And hearing that, Constantin, how would you help your client to filter out those tire kickers, as we mentioned before? And what do we do if, for example, Josh would only want commercial contractors? I'll let Josh begin.
Yeah, I think this is a interesting topic that I haven't really been able to dive into with any of my partners or anybody before in the way that Constantin and I have. And what's funny is he's often on the other side of the debate from me. I'm typically more on the side of, let's just throw some more money at it. I know the return on investment's pretty good. And, overall, it's going to work out. And again, I know that I'm probably a little biased in that direction because I know that my competitors aren't as good with utilizing AdWords. And I know the long-term value of a customer is so high. And we invest so heavily in that first interaction, that relationship, that phone call. And we train so hard on developing that repeat business that I know in a lot of cases, I can win a lot of business back with that. But on the flip side of that, there's so much noise in there, and that's what Constantin mentioned before about how we had our campaigns, and we were getting a lot of low value baskets in there or low value ticket items that I didn't necessarily want. I kind of saw it as a cost of doing business. It's kind of like when your outside sales rep is going to visit some high potential things, and then they stop at a office, and it just doesn't work out well. They get kicked out or whatever. Like that's kind of stuff's going to happen a little bit. But I didn't realize how much of that we could kind of rein in and be more effective with, because that is really valuable. And now we're even working on the more complicated stuff, which I really didn't imagine that we could get into it at some point, of what are the items that are smaller value that equate to a customer that is higher value, which is a really complicated way to look at it. So I think about something, again, like I mentioned before, like a core drill. Now, core drill might be a $100 or $200 rental, but there's things like that item that aren't a lot of money up front, but actually do likely show them to be a high value long-term customer. And so how do we almost now surgically grab those people? And then even from there, how do we work with our phone training vendor and our software vendor to pull information from there to then pass that back to make that even better? So we're looking at ways to say, okay, well, that was a brand new customer generated by a Google AdWord, and it was a low basket value, but it's a high value lead because that's a local plumber or a local electrician that we didn't know, that we'd love to establish a relationship. How do I tell Constantin that that was a great lead? How do I tell Google that that was a great lead? I want more of that really unique kind of butterfly of a lead, and there's ways to do it, which blows my mind. And so being able to continue to innovate on that, we're not spending more money, we're just making a lot more money with the spend that we have, which is awesome.
Right.
With you, Josh, we are at the next phase, I would say. Like, we're already working for like half a year. But at the beginning, we want to focus on the low-hanging fruits. And at the beginning, the easier way is to segment the traffic by the product. So I wouldn't say, like Alex asked, if you wanted to focus just on contractors, not on DIYers, for example. I don't think you would mind having a DIYer renting an excavator for $1,000 for a week.
Absolutely.
So here the competition is not between DIYers and contractors, it's between the products and the basket value. And as search is based on the demand, is based on the keywords, a contractor would go to Google and type excavator rental near me, same as an DIYer. So we cannot really segment them here at the initial phase. But what Josh is afraid of is paying $80 for a lead for a chainsaw, for example, that costs $50. And that chainsaw to be rented by a DIYer that will never come back and rent again because they don't rent frequently. The math is not working here. And if we come back to the pile of products, everything in one campaign, let's say you have one campaign and the cost per lead for that campaign is $30. Is that okay? Is not? You don't know, because inside that campaign you have everything. And $30 for an excavator, that's amazing. It's a good cost for that lead. But $30 for a drill, it's not okay. $30 for your own brand, it's not okay. That's very expensive. So we are getting back to that segmentation. And when you have it segmented, you can put different targets on different campaigns. So if we have a campaign for excavator, we can expect here leads at $30. If we have a branded campaigns, we should get leads there at $3, $4. If we have a campaign with lower basket value products inside, there the lead should cost us less than $10. So that's how we segment it. But what we are working now with Josh at this moment is focusing on on cheaper items, cheaper products, but rented by contractors. Here is the tricky part, because we have to integrate Google Ads with the CRM, and we have to ask Josh to give us the data that's saying that this drill was rented by contractors. The actual value of that drill, it's not $100. What was the first rental, but it can turn in $1,000 because this client is a plumber and he will come back, and we can feed all that information back to Google, and then we can make that campaign focusing on that type of customers that will rent more frequently from us.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of extend upon what Constantin is talking about there, you got to go after low-hanging fruit first. And there was obviously a lot of low-hanging fruit. I remember when I first did my personal study of my results versus Constantin's results, because you want to make sure that it's working like you expect. And there was a 33% increase in revenue, 11% increase in contract count. So contracts didn't increase as much as revenue did. So that meant bigger tickets. And a 95% increase in delivery revenue, which meant it was truly bigger items that were going out to longer term rentals and to contractors, which was amazing for me to see. But now we're kind of going back to that more, how do we get more elegant solution about this? Because it's kind of like, again, that core drill. Oftentimes that first rental from a pro contractor that you want to win is going to be a one-off. It's going to be they happen to be near you and they need something quick, faster, in a hurry. And so they're just trying to figure out where to get it because their current partner is out of it or not close or something like that. So they're gonna happen upon you. But if that's truly a plumber running a core drill, that could easily be $30, $40, $50,000 a year account on a core drill. And so, it's hard work here, but trying to figure out how to value those leads correctly and get more of those leads, I think could be an incredible next step there.
And you are comparing here our numbers with your numbers, but to be honest, your campaigns were not so bad.
Thank you. Yeah. Not bad. We're back to not bad.
I've seen Google Ads accounts managed by agencies with much worse performance, but your campaigns were quite well structured. Even if you had everything in one campaign, at least you had them segmented by different ad groups. So you had one ad group with this kind of products, this ad group with this kind of products. It was acceptable, but doing Google Ads for more than 8 years now, I've seen lots of accounts much worse than that. And I can see some red flags right when you open that account. And this might sound quite stupid, but I can see that account it's not performing well just from the campaign name or the ad group name. The campaign name is not affecting the performance of the account. You can type everything you want there. But if a campaign is named Tour Rental 2025 or Atlanta new campaign or tools, I don't know, some generic terms that don't tell you what's inside that campaign, I already am thinking that account might be underperforming. And if I dive deeper and I go to the ad group level and I see that it has one ad group and the name of that ad group is ad group 1, that's the first sign that account it's underperforming. And this is first related to the segmentation because it means it has just one account, one ad group. But there is a technical part here as well because we use the Google Ads editor, which is an offline tool that allows you to create campaigns in bulk, edit them easier, and work more time efficient. But when you create your campaigns from the web interface, from the Google Ads web interface, automatically Google creates the ad group with the name ad group 1. So if the ad group name is ad group 1, I know that you did it from the web interface. So you are not scaling that account. You are not managing that account as well as we can do it from the Google Ads editor. Because in your account now, I guess we have like 44 campaigns, like 1,000 ad groups, but thousands of keywords and different ads. You cannot do that from the web interface, going and clicking this ad group, adding one, typing that ad. You have to work in bulk to have such results. Yeah. And that has to be done from the Google Ads editor. And if your ad group name is ad group 1, I'm pretty sure you did it from the web interface.
Well, thank you for again reiterating that I wasn't that bad. But I did take over from
33% increase. It's not so much. So you did a good job.
Thank you. The company that we switched from, and I won't name their name because they were really good people, and I don't want to disparage them at all, and I'm sure they do great work for others. But they were looking at it from more of a retail perspective, and they've been doing our ads for a while. And I'm sure that this kind of stuff worked for retail, but it wasn't working for us at all. I mean, to talk about the difference, my AdWords campaigns were just fundamentally more successful than theirs were. I remember when I started studying it, I shut their ads down in the first 30 days of working here. and just paused everything. And I think, as you've probably seen, I'm okay spending money on AdWords. I shut it down because it was performing so poorly. I mean, we were paying for our logo to show up in Gmail, and that was one of our biggest clicks, is our logo. Like, I think people were probably accidentally clicking on our logo. Like, nobody is in their Gmail. It's like, oh, I all of a sudden need to rent a tool right now. I'm going to go click that logo of that company that I don't know.
Let's get an excavator. Maybe I will have something to do with it.
But yeah, maybe, I don't know it, but it was a terrible return on investment, and they were doing what probably worked for a lot of other companies. But Google isn't even trained on rental. Google is trained on retail and service industries and software companies. Rental's weird, and so not only do you have to massage what we do, but you also have to understand how Google's massaging that, and try and find that intersection that makes it really effective. And unfortunately, you can't just trust Google to do its job. You got to have somebody who's super technical in between, who understands what Google's trying to do and understands what I'm trying to do, and then figures out a way, like an engineer, to make those two meet in the middle.
What you said, that thing with the Gmail, that can work on sneakers, because you are on your Gmail, you see a picture of some sneakers and you can feel that you need them, you want them. It creates demand. It makes you think that you need them, but you don't actually need them. An excavator, you cannot think that, oh, maybe I will need it. You need it, or you don't need it.
That's
and
right.
If you need it, you will go to Google, search for it, and you have to find Northside tool rental there. You don't have Northside tool rental to appear in front of you on YouTube, on other channels.
I don't think I've ever talked to a customer who said they were sitting on their couch at 8:00 on a Saturday night and were like, I didn't think I wanted to do a project Monday morning, but I saw your ad and I was like, you know what? I want to rent an excavator for a week. That seems like a great idea.
Yeah. And maybe with the lower basket values, with a drill, with some projects for DIYers, in some sunny days, you can create some demand. You can make them think that, okay, you can go outside and build a house for your dog or something like that. But
That's fair.
Yeah, but for big items, heavy duty items, no.
Absolutely.
Listening to you both speak about campaign strategy and budgeting for growth, I cannot help but ask, what would be your take on the future of the industry? And I'm talking AI and automation here. Josh, where would you see the customer experience in rental going in the next 5 years? And Constantin, how will paid search change to match that future?
I think that's a hard question to answer. It's changing so fast. For us, we're trying to figure out how to be uniquely human, because that's who we are, but also technology driven or technology supported. You've got to utilize the technology. You've got to be more effective and more efficient, but it doesn't mean that you have to remove the humanity from it. And so just like doing an AdWord doesn't replace the handshake or the trust building, using AI doesn't replace the handshake and the trust building and the humanity in the relationship. So how do we marry the two and keep the best of both worlds? Because I think there's going to be a lot of ways to do that. So we're already testing and trying things. I think there's going to be stuff about where maybe AI is doing stuff on the back end for you to simplify the process, so that you're not spending so much time looking for data in reports or pieces of equipment or understanding what a customer is saying. It's supporting people in training or writing messages faster and more efficiently. But there's still that human there that's actually going to make the connection. We've actually gone through one of these transitions just recently, where now every customer that we have has access to a digital portal through our rental software that allows them to manage their rentals, pay their bills, see what they rented in the past, rent things again. They have a full account, which is something they've never had. And that includes the DIY who rents once a year, which I think is an incredibly cool, slick way to do it. Just an email address, they have to set up a password, and they don't have to do it, but it creates that kind of experience they expect from other places. And I was talking to one of our consistent renters, a pro contractor, and I was sharing that they now had access to this. And, one of their first things they said is, well, can I still call you guys? And I'm like, absolutely. Like, this is not at all a intention for us to remove ourselves from the relationship and say, go do everything online now because you can. What I want is it's 10, 11 at night and we're closed and sending us an email isn't effective and you need to reserve something in a hurry, or you want to check an account or see what you have out on rent, or ask a question, like I want to have the tools available for you so that you can do those things, so that you can self-serve when you want to, but I am absolutely here for the phone call when you're not. And so it's trying to marry those. And then I think the thing that scares me, and Constantin and I have talked about this a number of times, and we're trying to figure it out. And I don't know that anybody really knows, but how is AI going to affect AdWords? How is AI going to affect search? And are we prepared for what that future looks like? Right now, I think we're a little bit lucky, and I'd be interested in Constantin, especially if he disagrees. I think we're a little bit lucky because we have high intent searches, and Google doesn't, and I think a lot of search engines, but Google doesn't seem to serve a lot of AI results for high intent searches. If I say I need to find a hair cutter near me or a excavator near me, Google's not popping up an article about how excavators work and the differences between excavators. It knows you're looking for something right now, something local, and so it's trying to serve you the best result for that. But when you search for other things like what kind of car should I buy, it opens up a whole new world of a search result and what it starts to tell you. And are we prepared for that? Because I think that there is going to be a point where it says run an excavator near me or something, and it does pop up something like, here's the things you need to consider in renting an excavator. Here are the top places near you that rent those and their star reviews. And here's who I recommend based on your need and your location and what you've told me about the project. That's going to be cool when it happens, but also terrifying because I want to make sure that I'm showing up there too. And so how do we design our AdWords campaigns, which I'm sure Google will figure out ways to put that into Gemini? How do we design our website, our tools, all of that kind of stuff to make sure that we're prepared for that, and we don't get caught on the back foot for it.
What I see of AI inside Google Ads is like for the past 5 years, Google tries to introduce AI automations inside Google Ads, and we don't have to click so many buttons right now. It's already automated. There has been a lot of changes from 8 years ago when you had to create everything manually. Now it's a lot easier. But the AI thing is, the AI is good when the data you feed the AI is good. So if you put garbage into AI, you will take garbage out. So even for simple users, when they interact with ChatGPT or Gemini, if you don't ask the question as you need to ask it, you will have a poor response. So if you don't feed Google Ads with good data, you will not have good results. So here's the part of the integration between Google Ads and the offline data. We have to tell Google that this customer that rented this time that drill is a contractor. That customer that rented that excavator, it's also a contractor. That other customer is a DIYer, so it's lower value. So in the future, when contractors will go to Google and search, you say that Google, it's not showing Gemini responses for high demand searches, but Google already knows that user is a DIYer or is a contractor. So if we want to focus on contractors and we set all our ads to focus on contractors based on the value they bring us, if at the same time we'll search on Google a contractor and a DIYer, our account will show ads to the contractor and not for the DIY. Great, because I don't think a lot of other competitors are doing that. And because we see accounts where they don't even track the conversion, they don't even track a simple lead, but we have to track the lead plus the information about that user plus the value of that lead and so on. So yeah, the AI will become powerful and will become useful for the agencies, for the companies that will feed the right information into it. So we have to be focused on the data integration between Google Ads, the CRM, the website, and all that stuff.
Terrifying and exciting.
Terrifying when you don't know how to do it. Exciting when you would see those results.
I'm sure I could do it not bad if I tried.
Right. Well, that's a great note to move on to the takeaways of the meeting. I've got 2 last questions for you both, but I would like to start with Josh. Josh, I recently turned 26. I see you as someone who's had a successful career in the rental business, but in business overall. So I would really like to ask you, what is the one piece of advice that you wish you had received when you were my age?
First of all, I think you just called me old. by saying 26 and I've had a long career. So I don't know how to take that because I'm kind of at that cusp. I turned, let's see, 45 last year. So I'm at that cusp of where I'm starting to feel old, I guess. And thank you for reminding me that. I have to worry about my hips and my knees eventually now. One of the things that I have learned time and time again, and it has nothing to do with AdWords or digitization or anything that we're talking about here, that I really wished I had done a better job at 26, and people told me this and I didn't take it into account enough, is to live in the moment a little bit more and appreciate the moments. It is so easy to get distracted or focused on the next win, the next goal, the next step. When times are good, those good things. When times are bad, it's easy to get focused on how to survive, what to do next, what could happen and how to solve for those things, and to get stuck in those moments. But when I look back at both the great times and the difficult times, the things that I remember the most are like sitting around a conference table, having a cup of coffee with the team and strategizing, good or bad, doesn't matter. Building relationships with the team, seeing somebody get promoted, seeing somebody get their dream job. Just those, I guess even those are probably too much of a milestone. There's so many small moments where you don't really expect those to be great. I love the work that I do. I'm very lucky to be able to do work that I really enjoy. And it doesn't really matter if it's good or bad that year. And it doesn't really matter if you win an award or not that year. And, celebrate those wins and go for those. And that's great. And definitely try and survive when times are bad, but enjoy the process, enjoy the ride. Because that's the really fun part. It's the day to day that is really awesome. When I get to learn something from Constantin and, I understand AI better and have great conversations and, meet UL. It's like, these are the moments that are awesome. It's not the awards. It's not the good times. It's not the bad times. It's not the milestones. It's the day to day. Enjoy that. And if you can find a way to appreciate and enjoy those, it won't matter whether it's good or bad times. It'll actually make the bad times a lot easier. So enjoy the ride is what I would say.
Great. And obviously, a question for Constantin, since we're trying to build a business ground up here. Constantin, for the rental owners who are not that convinced on Google Ads and have relied mostly on word of mouth, will you have a message for them?
The word of mouth is great, but if you want to scale, you have to treat Google Ads as another mouth. It's based on demand, and if someone is searching on Google, it means that user, that person, didn't ask his friend about where to rent an excavator. He's asking Google where to rent an excavator. So you have to be there and reply to his question and make Google recommend him yourself. You have to be on Google, get that first recommendation from Google, and then deliver a great result, a great service, and make that customer come again to you, make that a repetitive customer, and make that customer recommend you for free to his friends. So Google can be the first touch point and the first recommendation. And mixing those two channels, Google Ads with word of mouth, is the best you can get. You get the volume from Google Ads, then you deliver good service, and you get repetitive customers, and you start the snowball, as you said at the beginning. Like, you start getting more and more first-time clients that become repetitive and so on.
Thank you for sharing that deep industry perspective from the front lines at Northside. It's clear that the old way of doing business is getting a powerful upgrade. And Constantin, those technical insights into Google Ads are exactly the kind of leverage rental businesses need to use to stay visible in 2026. And to everyone listening, we hope these tips help you navigate the shifting digital landscape that we are all going through. They give you a clear roadmap for your marketing strategy this year. And whether you're a local shop, whether you're a national player, the tools are right there, as you can see. So you just have to go ahead and use them. Thank you both for being here. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.